So is there any real hope? We've been singing about it this morning, but really, is there any real hope? What's this all been about? They've been proclaiming a message to you for the last 40 minutes, telling you about Jesus, telling you that Jesus went to a cross, reminding you that He went to a grave, and declaring to you that He came out of the grave. So what? Really? You didn't ask Him to die for you, did you? In your heart, this very moment, there are 4 things that each of us wants from God. We want out of life, but we don't get it except through Jesus. We all desire forgiveness. We all demand justice. We all hunger for mercy. And we all are starved to be loved. All of those things, those 4 things converge at the cross of Jesus Christ. And what they've been singing about this morning is the very convergence of those 4 things we desperately need. We long for them. We need them. And without them, we struggle. Without them, we flounder. Without them, we're just not who we know we were made to be. But there's a problem. And the problem is fairly important to understand. It's a profound problem. Because many of you are sitting here this morning and you're going, yeah, la, 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 Jesus in the clouds, so what? Because I got a problem with God. I've got a real problem with God. And the problem that you may be struggling with this morning is the whole problem of evil. And so in your mind, there's no good God because there's so much bad in the world. And there can't be such a good God with so much bad in our world. And so we struggle with it. In his book, River Out of Eden, the renowned scientist and leading atheist Richard Dawkins recalls a bus crash in England that claimed the lives of a number of kids. A London newspaper asked a priest for his response. What do you got to say for it? The priest said this. Well, the simple answer is that we do not know why there should be a God who lets these awful things happen. But the horror of the crash to a Christian confirms the fact that we live in a world of real values, positive and negative. If the universe was just electrons, there would be no problem of evil or suffering. But Dawkins didn't like that answer. And he came back with a vengeance. And he said this in response. Well, on the contrary, if the universe were just electrons and selfish genes, blind physical forces and genetic replication, some people are going to hurt. And others are going to get lucky. You won't find any rhyme or reason in it, nor any justice. The universe we observe has precisely the properties we should expect if there is at bottom no design, no purpose, no good, nothing but pitiless indifference. Now, most of you here this morning would say, I don't believe that. I believe there is something at the bottom of all of this. I believe there's exquisite design. There's divine purpose. There's incarnate goodness. And there's absolutely unconditional love. But Dawkins would come back to you. Maybe your own mind would come back to you and say, yeah, but there's some problems. Because, the problem of evil is an apparent proof of atheism. And I see it out there. And I see the problem. And so there mustn't be a good God. Or you might argue that the universal nature of evil argues against a good God. I mean, everybody wonders. You wonder. You haven't had a day you haven't wondered why bad things happen to good people, haven't you? There's another problem. Another proof some use. And they say, well, the problem of evil is personal because you personally experience it. Not only personally wonder about it, but you personally experience evil. It's a tough thing to deal with. But you've had times when your child has looked at you with tears in their eyes and has said to you, why did you let me hurt? And it's the cry of the human heart that looks into the face of God and from time immortal has said, why have you let us hurt? Why didn't you do something? You knew. You could have. Why didn't you do something? And so, given that scenario, a lot of us will say, well, any evil then disproves an all-good God. Any evil that exists means there cannot be a good God. The second thing we might struggle with is the amount of evil. We might say, well, a little bit of good, a whole lot of good, any kind of good. The needlessness of evil, the pointlessness of evil, it has to disprove a good God. But how much evil? How much would you say is too much evil? Would you say a Hitler who murdered 6 million Jews is too much? Or 60 million people who murder one child at a time? Or 6,000 murders? Or 6 murders? Or 600 murders? How much evil is too much? Or maybe only the evil you personally find justified when you need it, when it works for you. Some claim the unjust distribution of evil disproves a God. It's not fair. There's some good people. They don't deserve what they get. There's some bad people, and they don't get what they deserve. And so there can't be a good God if that be true. But we have something of a response to that, and you've heard these two terms all your life. It's a heavy term, original sin. Remember that term? And the other is vicarious atonement. Two big, heavy theological ideas, but they're somewhat key to our understanding of what's going on. Think with me about this. The human race is struggling with the whole issue of evil because we inherited evil from our first parents. And we're born this way, we act this way from day one. It's like a pregnant mother who gets on drugs, has a child, and gives that addiction to her child. We call that original sin. Adam and Eve passed on to us an addiction to sin. And because of that addiction, we pass that addiction on to the next generation and the next generation and the next generation. So that we are all related one to the other. I'm related to Adolf Hitler and Joseph Stalin and Mao Zedong and Charles Manson. And I'm related to Mother Teresa. And so are you. And we look at all of that and we think, wow. We get the very worst of things from our families, and we get the very best of things from our families. And just as the sins of the guilty are passed on to the innocent, so the sufferings and the virtue of one who was innocent was passed on to redeem the guilty. That being Jesus. The Redeemer, Jesus Christ, our Savior, our brother, part of our human family, made salvation possible by His death. And so I want to share this with you. Those 4 things, forgiveness, justice, mercy, and love, all collided with evil at the cross of Jesus Christ. And they slammed into one another because they are the cries of the human heart. And Jesus Christ at the cross dealt with them. I want you to think about evil with me for just a little bit more. Evil is a reality that everyone in this room faces every single day of your life. You struggle with the incompatibility between evil and an all-good God. I just wish life would be good, all the time good. So if evil seems to disprove God, and if God is then disproved, then all is lost. There's no hope. There is no hope because there's no God. There's no way to fix anything. God is gone. And hope is gone. There is then no reason to hold on, to hang on, because all we do have is what Hawkins did say. Is pitiless indifference, the pitiless indifference of the random acts of meanness and violence and disappointment. And so we deal with nature. So you just try to get up in the morning and stay one step ahead of this mindless, senseless game called life because there's no meaning and no purpose. And evil is the power, isn't it, that kills everything. It's the one affair that destroys a good marriage. It's the one misplaced, impulsive word that destroys a good friendship. It's that extra drink you take when you shouldn't have, and you slam into a pregnant mother on her way to church on a Sunday morning. It's when you cheat your employer. It's the little white lies. It's the gossip. It's the slander. We all say we hate evil, but we embrace it when it's convenient. Well, we detest the big things, right? We detest rape and murder. We detest sickness and famine and divorce and abuse, but we tolerate it when it's ours. We scream at the existence of a God who should do something about it, we think. And then we transfer our anger to God because we say He should have known. He should have been a step ahead of it. He should have done something. And therein is the dilemma of forgiveness and evil. There's a passage I would love for you to see. It's John chapter 8. And in John chapter 8, Jesus deals with a woman caught in adultery. He's confronted with the dilemma of evil. It's the dilemma we all face. See, it's not so easy, is it? In John chapter 8, a woman was brought to Jesus, caught in the very act of adultery. Some think she might have got set up in order to make her an example. But they bring her to Jesus and they say to Jesus in John chapter 8, let me scoot down here to verse 4. Teacher, this woman was caught. Moses in the law commanded that such should be stoned. But what do you say? Tricky, tricky. Then they said, testing him, that they might have something of which to accuse him. But Jesus stooped down and wrote on the ground with his finger as though he did not hear. He heard. They said, testing him. And he understands the test that's going on. So when they continued asking him, he raised himself up and he said to them, who is without sin among you? Let him throw a stone at her first. And again he stooped down and wrote on the ground. And then those who heard it, being convicted by their conscience, went out one by one, beginning with the oldest to the last, and Jesus was left alone. And when Jesus had raised himself up and saw no one but the woman, he said to her, Woman, who are those accusers of yours? Who has condemned you? And she said, No one, Lord. And Jesus said to her, Neither do I condemn you. Go. So what would you do? There is a case of evil in front of you. Hello, Christians. How would you handle the morality of the situation? Should you stone her? She's caught in the act of adultery. She's violating her vows. See, if Jesus said, stone her, yes, stone her, then he was cruel. If he said, don't stone her, he was indulgent. He would violate his own teaching about forgiveness, and he would run the risk of violating Moses' law. So, if he argued for stoning, he violated Roman law as well, because they didn't give the right of capital punishment to the Jews. But if he didn't advocate for capital punishment, he would upset the Jews, because the law of Moses again said, if you catch a woman in adultery, you stone her. So, what would you do? Jesus took evil head on. And he said something about it. Now, our choice is, we like to condemn some evils and not other evils. Which ones would you condemn? And which ones would you let go? And what would you do here? Would you say, stoner or not stoner? What would you do? Well, Jesus neither condemned her nor condoned her. Jesus' answer to the situation was forgiveness. Therein, forgiveness collides with the cross of Christ. He looks at her and says, I don't condemn you. I don't condone you. It admits evil is evil. Jesus is admitting evil is evil. But he releases the debtor. Taking it head on. He didn't avoid it. Now, we've all experienced the need and the grace to be forgiven. When we've done something stupid, we've done something that violates moral law, we violated common law, we violated the law of God, and there's nothing more sweet, something that is we all want, is when somebody says, I forgive you. I forgive you. It's an awesome thing. But we're not always good at forgiving others because it violates our demand for specific justice over a particular issue. So we want full justice all the time, don't we? That's the problem of forgiveness. And it leads to the dilemma of God. And here is that dilemma. If you give forgiveness, if Christ gives forgiveness to the woman caught in adultery, if he forgives me and you of our evil, then he runs the risk of violating justice. Because every violation needs to be dealt with. All of you want justice. Yes, I believe in justice. So should it be justice or mercy? Which do you want? If you're all for justice, then let's be all for justice. Or how about a little mercy? Makes a big difference. Well, here's the problem. Either God exacts the penalty of sin and evil, or He does not. He punishes or He does not. He cannot do both. He cannot both show mercy and show justice. Doesn't work that way. It's one or the other. The problem of evil will not allow God to get off the hook that easy. See, the problem is this. Mercy is the relaxation of justice. And justice is the refusal of mercy. So what will it be? You punish or you don't punish? How can God respect both justice and mercy? We all want fairness based on our own particular demands and our own particular standards. We all want justice for the environment. We want fairness for minorities. We want fairness at work, fairness in pay, fairness in health, fairness in opportunities. We demand justice for ourselves. Absolutely. And when we don't get it, we blame the God we don't believe anyway for not providing the justice He should have provided if in case He happened to have actually been real. But if God gave all of us all the justice we deserved all the time, we would all die and go to hell. And I'm grateful for mercy and not simply justice. So the solution, the response is simply this. The cross of Christ is where evil also collided with justice and mercy. At the cross, full justice is done. Sin is punished with the very punishment of hell itself. Remember when Jesus said, my God, why have you forsaken me? That is the cry of the human heart. You have done me evil. It feels, doesn't it? So God worked it out this way. God gave Jesus the full punishment of sin. Jesus took the full payment of sin. In the body of Christ went justice, but to us went mercy. He separated the sin from the sinner, put the sin on the sinless one, and gave mercy to the sinners. To the progenitors of evil, He gave mercy. To the sinless, perfect, spotless Lamb, He gave the judgment of sin. And so, what do you do with that? What are you going to do with that? The biblical response is repentance and belief in the work of Christ on your behalf. That's what God offers us this morning. Because evil is not a concept, is it? Evil is something tangible and real and experienced. And so Jesus literally went to a cross and He tangibly, really died on a cross, and He experienced all the horrors of separation, all the pain of physical trauma. He bore all of that so that He could pay for all of this, so that He could take evil head on. Justice and mercy colliding with the cross of Christ right there, right then, 2,000 years ago. But one other thing, the cross of Christ is also where the love of God collided with evil. The Bible says, for God so loved the world, He gave His Son so that whoever would believe in Him would not perish, but have everlasting life. Then you say, well, wait. Love, mercy, justice, and forgiveness, all colliding, all there at the cross of Jesus Christ. Those things that I need. God didn't overlook justice. He has never overlooked the injustice of evil. He's never overlooked any injustice that's ever happened to you. Jesus paid it. Jesus paid for it. Somebody had to pay for it. Justice required it. And so Jesus took care of it. But see, the problem of evil is that it's supernatural. It's vertical. And so there has to be this fix. Because evil is a broken relationship. It's a spiritual divorce. And so you're here this morning hearing about a story that's all about bringing you back into relationship with God so that you can know God again, so that evil will be dealt with. God does not overlook evil. He is a good God. What Jesus did for us at the cross went to the heart of the matter, went to the heart of our guilt as sinners, as evil. A good psychiatrist can make you feel a whole lot better about something you've done. A good psychiatrist can give you some medication, take you through some therapy, and relieve you of the shame you feel, of the guilt that's harassing your mind and destroying your body. But a good psychiatrist can never get rid of the source of your guilt. And that's what Jesus did when Jesus went to the cross. Only Jesus can cure the problem, because Jesus goes to the source of our guilt, which is the evil in our heart. It's sin. And Jesus dealt with that. His love went to great lengths to find us, to show us that no one can love us like He can love us. He died to prove that love for us. So it is at the cross of Jesus Christ that love and justice and mercy and forgiveness converge. They come together right there. We all want to appeal to justice, don't we? Because we all want to appeal to a higher standard. So there has to be a higher standard, or else your sense of justice and forgiveness and mercy and love is just your own whatever relative conjugation in your own mind about what it all should look like. And so you go around in your word going, hey, be just, hey, be merciful, hey, be loving, and here's the way you do that. There is either an objective moral standard for this or there is not. But there cannot be a multiplicity of standards by which we're all trying to hold each other to and killing each other over it. We demand what we cannot give. God gives freely from His own heart. Our daily experience is simply this. We cannot function in a world without justice, mercy, forgiveness, and love. Well, we're here this morning, by the way, to celebrate the resurrection, right? And the message of the resurrection 2,000 years ago was not, love your neighbor, love yourself, be kind to the world, love your dog, be kind to the environment, be special, be sweet, be nice. That was not the gospel. That was not the good news. The good news that rang out from two angels at the site of Jesus' grave was this: Christ is risen. He collided with forgiveness and justice and mercy and love, and He won. But it sent Him to a grave. The resurrection shows that He beat death. He destroyed death. Death, that enemy that says, I'll take you down. It's the final evil. He destroyed it by His resurrection. And we have victory. And so we're here this morning to celebrate that. But my question to you is, do you know Jesus? Have you done anything about this? Or you just want to spend the rest of your life whining about the injustice, whining about the lack of mercy, whining about the lack of the love in the world, and whining about the fact nobody can forgive anybody of anything? Well, there's a reason for that. You want to know Jesus? You want to experience the solution? Theologian Alistair McGrath outlined these three stages, and I leave you with this morning. He said, if you want to receive what Christ did for you on the cross, if you want to experience what He provided for you with that convergence and that resurrection, then there are three things you need to consider. First, you may look at all of this, the cross and the resurrection, and you say, well, I believe God is promising that to me. Secondly, you may say, yeah, I trust the promise. And thirdly, unless you respond to the promise, you don't obtain forgiveness. Now, the first two ways are sort of the way of faith. They prepare the way for the third. But without the third step, they're incomplete. Here's an example. Think of penicillin. Take a bottle of penicillin, wonderful stuff. The famous antibiotic was identified by Alexander Fleming and first produced for clinical use in Great Britain many years ago. The drug was responsible for saving a lot of people. It's great stuff. It's a great drug. But think of salvation like taking this drug in the first three stages of faith. I may accept that a bottle of penicillin exists. I may believe from all the research and all of the anecdotal testimonies that, and maybe even observations, that penicillin will work. I trust its ability to clean me up and fix me. Do away with my blood poisoning, if you will. But unless I receive the drug, I take a shot at the drug, I won't have access to the drug. And it won't destroy the bacteria. It won't make me whole. Some of you here this morning, you believe, you've talked all of this, but you've not taken the penicillin. You've not benefited from what you observe and what you say you believe. Faith forges the link between what you see and what you take, between Jesus Christ and salvation. Faith unites us with the resurrection of Jesus Christ and makes available to us everything Jesus has promised. The forgiveness, the justice, the mercy, the love. What do you want? Would you pray with me this morning?